The Gemara in Sukkah tells us many details within the mitzvah of Asiyah Sukkah, making a kosher Sukkah and dwelling in one. And one of the rules we learn out from because it says by Sukkah's Tasu that you have to make a Sukkah, so the Gemara makes a drasha, Taseh v'lo min ha'asur. You have to make a Sukkah. The Sukkah can't be made before. In other words, what does it mean? The Gemara gives the example of a haystack. You jump in and you make a hole on the bottom and you create the schach on top. In other words, the schach was made before you had the walls of the Sukkah. So that is not a kosher Sukkah. It's Taseh v'lo min ha'asur. You have to have the Sukkah, the walls up, and then when you put the schach on, which is Sukkah schach, which is the key, so then that's the correct way. If you build a Sukkah with the schach on when it's not a kosher Sukkah, so then it's Taseh v'lo min ha'asur. It's not a kosher Sukkah. And in fact, that's part of the discussion Rabbi Tam raises. The Gemara talks about a Sukkah l'mala michaf amma psula. If you build a Sukkah more than 20 amas high, it's no good. It's like we have a halacha by Dir Chanukah, because ayin lo ra, the person doesn't look that high. He's not going to notice it. The purpose of Chanukah is to see the candles publicizing the miracle. Here it's to remember Uman Yedu Dorasechan, so if you don't see it, you can't fulfill your mitzvah. So it's a Sukkah psula. So the Rishonim discuss, let's say someone built a Sukkah 25 amas high, so it's no good. So obviously you could lower the schach and everything would be all well and fine. But let's say instead of lowering, you leave that schach on top and you build new schach 15 amas high within the 20 amas. So Rabbi Tam says that is good. So Rabbi Yoshi says, what are you talking about? If I build a sukkah on top of a tree or inside a home, it's not a good sukkah. So how does it help that if I leave the pasul schach on top, how come it shouldn't be? How is it good? So to Rabbi Adam's sheets, it must be that a sukkah l'mala michaf al, a sukkah l'mala michaf al isn't a sukkah psula. It is a sukkah psula, but it's not a. The chefsa isn't not good. It's a din in the gavra. I can't fulfill my mitzvah. Really, the sukkah isn't pasul, but I can't fulfill my mitzvah since I can't see the schach. So if you give me a heichet timts where I can see the schach, so therefore it's okay. The schach above 12 amas isn't a problem. It's a non-entity. So therefore, Rabbi Tam says you could build the sukkah there, and Rabbi Yonah says no way. It's like building a sukkah in your home. And then another case they discuss about is itztava. It's another way of working out the issue. The Pnei Yehoshua raises it that you could build a platform. So the Pnei Yehoshua, other Achronim ask, other Rishonim, it's Taseh v'lo min ha'asur, because the sukkah is not good. It's mimalo michaf amma. Now you're building a platform. You're making things closer. So therefore, why isn't it a violation of Taseh v'lo min ha'asur? So again, so we see, according to Rabbi Yoshi, it would be. It's a problem, and therefore you'd have to take the schach down and redo it. But according to Rabbi Tam, it's not a problem. It's not a sukkah psula. It's a din in the gavra in the person. Now, once I hire the platform, so it's a kosher sukkah. So that's what they point out, and that's what they point out. So there's another lacha where the Rishonim talk about it. The Mordechai, others. Let's say it rains. So it rains, and so you put a tarp over. So the sukkah is not good. And then when it stops raining, you take the tarp off. So the sukkah becomes good. Is that a problem of Taseh v'lo min ha'asur? So some say it is, because the sukkah is not good anymore. The walls are there, and all of a sudden you pull off the thing. You're making the sukkah kosher. So they point out the Achronim give different answers why it's not a problem, or when it's not a problem. So some say it's not a problem because when So the deal with the tarp is they say you put it directly on the. So therefore, it's not a problem because it was done. It was made properly originally. Since it was made done if you originally built it and you built it with the tarp on top, you'd have a problem. But since it was done, made in its proper way first, so therefore, even if you put on tarp later, so therefore it's not an issue. There's another issue, parenthetically, Hilchos Shabbos, Yantiv issue of Ohel. So the poskim discuss the issue of Ohel, but if you put the tarp directly on the tzchak, so there's no Ohel, or if you leave it a tefach over, so that's only a din of Mosif. Ohel, that's okay. Now, let's point out, if you put the tarp connected to the wall, so therefore it's kind of like a door, it goes back and forth. Those are different issues returning Ohel. But regarding Tassalom and also, they say it's not an issue because it was kosher l'chadchila. So that's how they explain. Let's say the Gemara talks about whether we should, the machokas in the Gemara, whether we need a diras keva, diras arai. We paskin, it's a diras arai. But there are very few cases where, in other words, in most cases, either though everyone's going to say it's a diras keva, diras arai, one of the few places of dispute is a sukkah on wheels. A sukkah on wheels is clearly a diras arai, and we paskin it's good. So let's say someone wanted to build a sukkah on wheels, then the reason is because they share a driveway with someone else, and someone else doesn't want them putting the sukkah in the parking lot, they won't be able to park. So he wants to know, can he, when he's not using it, he'll roll the sukkah into the garage, and then when he's finished, when he needs it, he'll come and bring it out. So is that a problem of Tasel Umanasa? Because when it's in the garage, the schach is no good. So that's what the poskim say, that no, it's not a problem, because as long since you built it, when you built the L'Shem sukkah, it was a kosher sukkah, it was made proper in the beginning, so therefore it's not a concern anymore of Tassav Alomina Asr. So that's what the poskim point out. One has to be careful that when you make the sukkah, don't make the sukkah under don't make a sukkah under a tree or in a garage in a place where it's not good, but then you'll have to move the schach around in order to make it. That's what some say to do anyway. That's what some machmer, every time they put the tarp on, they go ahead and they move the schach around in order to avoid the issue of tasav alom and asab. We pass it's okay, and therefore this one has to be careful when you make the sukkah, make it kosher l'chach, and therefore when you put the tarp on or you move the sukkah on wheels into the garage, so therefore when you take it out, it's no longer a problem. The Mishnah tells us in Sukkah, and Av Chaf Hey Amid Aleph 25a, it talks about the mitzvah of eating in the Sukkah, as the Torah tells us, Basukkahs Teishvu Shivash Yamim, and the Gemara makes a drasha, Teishvu Ka'ein Tadiru, you should dwell in the Sukkah the way you dwell in your home. And therefore, you should do as much as you can in the sukkah, you should learn in the sukkah, eat in the sukkah, etc. And similarly, if there's a leak in your kitchen, so you're not going to stay in the kitchen, you move into your dining room into another room. So too, if it's raining in the sukkah, one is exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. So because you dwell in the sukkah the way you would all year round. And regarding the first night, that's a discussion whether there's an exemption of rain. That's why we go l'chumrah, and therefore, if it's raining all night, we eat in the sukkah. We make kiddush in the sukkah, we eat a kazayas of challah. We don't make a leishay by sukkah and go inside, and later on, if it stops raining, we could go out. So that's a discussion the Rishonim, whether there's an exemption of mitzvah on Laila Rishona. But besides that, we assume there's a mitzvah in the sukkah like you would normally. However, the Mishnah tells us in sukkah, that's only achilas keva, permanent eating. You're having bread, you're having cake, mizonos, that's mandatory to eat in the sukkah. But you're having water, potato chips, or fruit, one is not obligated to eat in the sukkah. One is only obligated in achilas keva and not achilas arai. And in fact, the post can point out that we're even stricter by sleeping than we are by eating, because sleeping, even temporary sleep, should be done in the sukkah. Not only permanently, but even a shina sarai. However, by achila, we're lenient by achila. So the Gemara, after Mishnah and Daf Chaf Heyam and Aleph and Daf Chaf Vav, after the Mishnah tells us the halacha that one is permitted to eat achilas arai outside the sukkah, it gives us a story to illustrate it. It tells us that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was given an achilas arai, an amount of food and the type of it that didn't warrant eating in the sukkah, and nevertheless he asked that the food be brought to him in the sukkah. And similarly we find as well, Rabbi Gamliel was like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Even achilas arai, they were strict in to even eat that inside the sukkah. And then on the other hand, the Gemara points out that Rav Sadok, he was offered to eat an achilas arai, a snack, outside the sukkah, and he ate outside the sukkah in accordance with the strict halacha of achilas arai. So the Gemara tells us in Chav Vav and Chav Zayin that what is the purpose of these stories? What are the stories in the Gemara the Mishnah teach us? So the Gemara tells us, and the Mefarshim elaborate, that and this is true in most areas of halacha, there's the me'ikr hadin, the minimum amount, the baseline halacha, and you have lufnim ashuras, then you have a chumrah. You could do persons who's meticulous, so they could even do more than is mandatory. So the Gemara, and in fact the Rambam in Hilchos Sukkah, Parak Vav, Halacha Vav, and the Shulchan Aruch bring down these both approaches as both legal halachic opinions. That when one is eating achilas arai, you're drinking a cup of water, soda, chips, fruit, one has an option to eat in your house. But however, it's praiseworthy, it's a chumrah for those who want to even eat that inside the sukkah. So that's and that's the Gemara. And in fact, we find this, as Rav Kook elaborates, but we find this as these two different models. We know the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Imos, they did mitzvahs b'Torah eino mitzuva v'yoseh. They did mitzvahs voluntarily. They volunteered to do mitzvahs. So if they volunteered to do mitzvahs, and they got rewarded for it, and therefore all the mitzvahs we do today, even bris milah, that's not because Avram did it, it's because it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. So we have two strands. We have, on one hand, we have the Torah's Avram, and we volunteer things, and Torah's Moshe, the mandatory. And that's what we find in many halachas. We find that so sneas, there's a certain amount where the minimum one is obligated, let's say to cover the knees and the elbows. But if a person wants to do more, the person wants to wear a skirt down to their ankles or wear long sleeves, so then that's their option. But if one doesn't want to, they don't have to. But however, to keep the basic halach, everyone has to do. But we have, that's Torah's Moshe, and Torah's Avram. Those people have a right, if they want to do more, they can take on extra chumras. So that's what we learn out from the Mishnah. So interesting, some of the commentators point out, and I read it, I believe, as an article from Rabbi Jachter, who wrote as a couple of svarim on as well gray matter. So I think he brought it down, and I've seen others, that what is the connection here? that the Gemara over here talks about Rav Tzadok, it talks about Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, that they point out that these were people who were involved in the Churban Bayesheni. Like when the Gemara talks about in Gin, when the Gemara is about Churban Bayis, that we read on Tisha B'Av, and the certain Gemaras we have to read on Nun Hey Amid Beis, Nun Vav. So these are central figures in the Churban Bayesheni. So what is the connection here between the Churban Bayesheni and the Halacha of Sukkah about eating Achilas Arai in the Sukkah, eating Achilas Arai outside the Sukkah? What is the connection here? So Chazal tell us, the Gemara in Yuma and Kesam Beis talks about what was the reason for the Churban Habayis. So we know for the Churban Habayis there was the big three: Gila Arayis, relations, Shvichas Damim, not to commit murder, not to worship idols. They violated the big three. But the Gemara says in Yuma and Chesam Beis, the Gemara says, but Churban Bayis was sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred. That seems to be worse, because for the first Beis HaMikdash Churban Bayis reached, it only took 70 years to rebuild. We're still waiting now for Churban Bayis Sheni, and as Rav Kook always points out, if the cause of the Churban was sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred, so then we need avat chinam. We have to go and love someone just for the fact that they're a Yid, the fact they're a Jew. You have to have avat chinam. So some suggest that's what our Mishnah, which quotes the different rabbis, the central figures during Churban Bayesheni, is, as the Netziv points out, we're going to begin Sefer Bereshis soon, and the Netziv brings down in the beginning of Sefer Bereshis that the Jews were very, of that time, or had a lot of Yirei Shamayim. They were very involved in Limud Torah. However, the problem was they regard anyone who did things different than them as an apikaris, as heretical, that they basically didn't go race the other side. They weren't very tolerant. So that's what the Mishnah is coming to teach me. That you have two legitimate viewpoints. You could drink the water in your house, or you could be machmer and drink the water in the sukkah. You can eat the chips in your house, you can eat the chips in the sukkah. And therefore, we don't have to say one who's eating the water in the sukkah, what are you doing? Are you too from? Are you showing off? No, we accept someone wants to be machmer, that's great. And just like someone who drinks the water, who eats the nash in the house, we don't say they're not from enough, they're too modern, they're too liberal. And that's what Mishnah is coming to teach me. The connection to Churban Habayis is, if the Chisaron was sinas chinam, they didn't tolerate one another's view, to rectify it, we have to become more tolerant and accept the views, even those that differ from our own. Of course, those which are legitimate views. That's one approach. Others want to suggest perhaps a different connection between the rabbis here and the connection to the Churban Bayesheni. So interesting, the Gemara over there in Gin talks about what different rabbis did in order to try to prevent the Churban Habayis. So the Gemara tells us in Gin that Rav Tzadok fasted for 40 years before the Churban, in order to try to fight off the Churban, to convince God not to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. However, the same Rabbi Gamliel, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, they might have did other methods, but fasting was not one of them. So it's interesting to note that when it came to fasting to prevent the Churban Bayesheni, so Rav Tzadok was strict. He fasted, and Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Zakkai, they ate, but they did other things. Yet, when it comes to being machmir regarding the laws of Sukkah, of eating achilas arai, so Reb Tzadok was lenient, and Reb Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Gamliel were strict. So we see a tremendous lesson, as Rav Soloveitchik points out, as always in the Rambams, in this introduction to the Shmona Prakim, in what he calls the golden path, the Shviel Hazav. All extremes are bad. Everything in moderation. That, as the Rambam says, you have a reed and it's bent to the left, and you want to get it back in the middle. So if you just bend it back to the middle, eventually it's going to move back to the left. But if you move it all the way to the right, so then it will go back to the middle. Of course, if you move it too far, it might break. So therefore, if you have an extreme, if you have a sickness, you have to go to the other extreme. But if you don't have a sickness, you have to have balance. So Rav Soloveitchik pointed out, that doesn't mean that in each thing, everything that you do, you have to take a middle approach. You have to be in the moderate. Obviously, you might be more, certain issues might be issues to you, others might not be. You could be passionate about some, less passionate about others. But as the Rav pointed out, in the sum of all your parts, and you take the big picture, even someone who's moderate, sometimes it's very aggressive or very passionate. Other times, you could be very quiet and passive at the same time. And therefore, that's in one's life. You don't necessarily have to be. You don't have to be boxed into one approach, as long as you end up in the middle, etc. And that's what Mishnah comes to say. That that's the motto of Reb Tzadok, who was lenient by Sukkah, but he was strict regarding fasting by Sukkot, by the Churban Habayis. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Gamliel, who were lenient, who were strict by Sukkah, they were lenient. They didn't fast by the Churban. In fact, and that's the pshat the Rav explains. The Gemara tells us in Sukkah and Daf Lamed Beis Amud Beis 32b that a hadas that is not meshulish, the different halach is interesting. You know, it's a separate discussion. How Rav Chaim Salvation and others point out that perhaps by a hadas it's not meshulish, and it doesn't even have a status of a hadas. But the Gemara says in Sukkah 32b that a hadas that is not meshulish, that doesn't have it all three leaves emerging from the same level. It's labeled a hadas shoteh, a crazy hadas, a psychotic hadas. And what's the pshat? Different explanations what it means. But al pi machshav, what does it mean you're a hadas meshulish? Why are you a psychotic hadas if you're not meshulish? Because a meshulish means it's balanced. That from that the three leaves emerge from the same level. If you're not balanced, so then you're imbalanced, so then you're not mentally healthy. We know someone who is not mentally healthy is psychotic, has different type of issues. And life is all about balance. And therefore when people have imbalances, therefore they have to take medication or they have to go into different homes in order to deal with their illness. So that's what Rav Soloveitchik explained when he talks about a katan or a katana, katan 13 and under, or a katana, that they consider lav b'nei deya. They're not considered to have any das. Why? He says because they're not psychologically balanced. He points out that, you know, when a child's happy, he gets his treat, he gets his box, wherever he gets his doll, she's totally happy. And there's a complete happiness. There's no hint of sadness at all. And similarly, when a child is sad, he forgets all the good things and he's totally sad. That's the challenge of an adult. That someone who is psychologically healthy and a mature individual, you'll never be completely happy or completely sad. Even in moments of great joy and deep sorrow, you're going to maintain your composure and you're going to maintain your balance. And that's why Chazal tell us, some doesn't have a hadas mishulash, those leads are in balance, or a hadas shot, and that's true in life as well. And that's the lesson of the Mishnah, perhaps the stories with Rav Tzadok, Rav Shimon, and Rav Yochanan and Zakkai, that you need the Shvi'al Hazav. You have to end up being moderate, but doesn't mean on every specific issue you need a total balance. You can feel strongly about fasting on the Churban, and when it comes to Achillas Harai, that's okay. So one always has to have an appropriate balance, and that's what life's all about, having an appropriate balance and a perspective. And and you need an appropriate perspective to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It tells us in Sukkah regarding the pasuk Basukkos Teishu Shiva Shamim Uman Yedu Dorisechem, on the pasuk in the Chumash, which tells us that when one sits in the sukkah, one should have kavana ki b'sukkos hoshafti, that we dwelled in the sukkah. So there's a famous dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva on what sukkos means. So Rabbi Akiva says sukkos mamish. They went back and forth. They built tents. They took them down every day, etc. And Rabbi Eliezer says no. It was the anei hakavod. It was the cloud of glory that protected them, and that's what we're referring to. And they point out, so even if it's the building of the sukkah, so what significance is that? The significance is to realize that everything we were in a temporary abode, and still we have to think of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Anei HaKavod to remind us of all the tremendous nisim that flows it. And in fact, there's a famous question of Rav Chaim points out as follows, that what happens, the Gemara tells us that there are 3 different things that the Jews had in the Midbar. They had the Anei HaKavod, the cloud of glory, and they had the man, the food from heaven, and they had the mayim and the water. So we all know that the Sukkot is after the Anei HaKavod. So how come the Anei HaKavod got a holiday and nothing else? So Rav Chaim Shmulevitz points out that how does one show the love for someone? You have a child and you give them food and water, you don't starve them. Does that show you love? No, it's just common decency. You show your love by doing all the extra things. So that's what they point out here. Giving them bread and water after they left Egypt in the Midbar, Midas Hadin requires you to do that. But to make the trip so comfortable, with the shoes, the clothes, nothing wore out, protection of the animals, that shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for us, and therefore we make a yontif out of the Anei HaKavod, because that shows our love, that shows that's something extra. So that's what the Torah tells us. Sukkos Teishu Shiva Shamim, and and you have to think about the mitzvah of sukkah, and we passing like Rabbi Eliezer, it's the Anei HaKavod, it's the cloud of glory. So the Torah asked the famous question, like, why are we celebrating Sukkot now? It seems to be in the wrong season. We should be celebrating it Pesach time, when the Jews left Egypt. For 40 years they traveled in the Midbar. So why are we celebrating Sukkot now? We built Sukkot now after Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So the Torah answers because if we build Sukkot before Pesach, so then, or at Pesach time, it looks like we're building a summer home. The spring's coming, and now we're building a spring and summer home. And therefore, that's why it's not recognizable you're doing a L'Shem Mitzvah. However, when you build in the fall, why else are you building a sukkah if the winter is approaching? And therefore, it's not recognizable. And therefore, we do it now. However, that it's still lacking, because what does the Torah mean? You should celebrate the holiday in the wrong season, because it can turn people going to make a mistake. So therefore, the Vilna Gaon explains. The Vilna Gaon explains that no, we're talking about a different Anei HaKavah. We're talking about that when the Jews, right after Yom Kippur, when God forgave the Jews for the Cheda Ego, for the sin of the golden calf, and then they started building the Mishkan. And then on the 15th day of Tishrei, the Vilna Gaon works it out, they got the cloud, the divine presence returned. After God left them because of the sin, God forgave them. In fact, that's the Vilna Gaon. We say now with davening, so Ahavta Osanu, that's Pesach, he chose us. Ahavta Osanu, Bacharta Banu, he chose us, that's Pesach. Ahavta Osanu, that's Shavuos, he gave us the Torah. V'ratzitza Banu, what's Ritzoi? What is it? What does forgiveness have to do with Sukkot? So that's the Pshat. And Sukkot is the day where we came back and we got the Anei HaKavah back and showed God renewed his relation. Not just, I forgive you, but it's not going to be the same. He took it back to the same level that it was even before. That's the famous Meshach Chochmah. The Meshach Chochmah knows that before the Cheda Ego, it's always called Chag HaAsif, the Yantiv of Sukkot. After, later on, it's called Chag HaSukkot. So the Meshach Chochmah explains because it wasn't until after the Cheda Ego we need the Ritzoi, and therefore the Sukkot came, the Anei HaKavah returned to us, the divine presence returned, and therefore that's why Sukkot is now. In fact, that's how some explain, even though we have a concept that women are exempt from time-oriented mitzvahs, nevertheless, Afein Hayu Ba'os Hanei. So the principle, if you're involved in the miracle, you're also obligated. And it's a question whether it only applies to rabbinical laws or all biblical laws. The Tosfos has different opinions, but based on this, one can understand why are women exempt from the mitzvah of Sukkah. Matzah Chayavin. There are other answers, but one answer is because Sukkot represents the return of the divine presence after the Cheda Ego and the Mishkan. Since the women didn't sit in the Cheda Ego, they were never commanded in the mitzvah of Sukkah. That's why women are exempt. It's still praiseworthy for them to do it, as always, but that would explain Al Pi Halacha why women are technically exempt. So that's what they point out here. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. Ahavta Osanu, and then Uratzisa Banu. That Sukkot is a time of Ritzoi. It's a time when we're forgiven for the sin of the Cheda Ego, and that's why also when we look after Sukkot we have Shemini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. So different, you could explain them from the Shalosh Regolim cycle, but some explain it's an extension of the Yomim Noraim. This, like with the Gemara says, it goes to Hoshana Rabba, we say David Hashem Ori, that the cycle is still going, because what's the ultimate simcha? Is now after sin separates us from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we run out of sin when we get forgiven for our sin, so the barrier leaves us, and therefore we're able to get closer to God. We'll have the ultimate simcha. So the ultimate simcha, Simchas Torah, is when the ultimate forgiveness, and therefore we're ready to accept the Torah b'Ava. So on Hoshana Rabba, there is a custom of Chavitas HaRava. In the next couple of moments, maybe another hour perhaps, we'll be taking the Aravas. We're familiar with the whole week of Sukkot. We know we're familiar with the Daled Minim, the Lulav, with the Aravas and the Hadassim, and then we have the Esrog. So that is a mitzvah min Torah on day one, and the rest of Sukkot, it's a mitzvah midrabanan. Our meaning is meaning Ashkenaz, is we make brachas, whether it's a mitzvah min Torah or a mitzvah midrabanan. So it doesn't affect us. Doesn't affect what bracha we make the same bracha on the Tilat Lulav. It's a discussion in the Gemara. What bracha, assuming you do make a bracha on the second day and on of Sukkot, what's the bracha? One opinion is you make the bracha al mitzvah sekenim. In other words, that gets into a general issue of when you do a mitzvah midrabanan, is it like what they call, is it a mitzvah prati? In other words, does it hook on to the biblical mitzvah? So let's say right in today, yes, not yesterday, from day 2 and on, am I actually doing a mitzvah of lulav? That would be a mitzvah prati. That it takes on the status of the private, personal mitzvah. Do I say no? It's no different to me doing any other mitzvah midrabanan. We look at it as a mitzvah midrabanan, and hence the bracha mitzvah sekenim. Our minig is not that way. We do make an anatilas lulav, and I believe there are some Sephardi shitas who don't even make a bracha all week long. They only make a bracha on day 1. I guess when day 1 falls out on Shabbos, they don't make a bracha at all that year. And they only make a bracha on day 1. They only make a bracha on the mitzvah min Torah. I guess they assume they're viewing as lulav kol shiva as a minhag, perhaps, and not a din d'Rabbanan, because even Tzvardim make brachas on din d'Rabbanan, but there are shitas like that brought down. In practice, I've never seen any of them. I haven't seen anyone not make a bracha, but I guess it's hard to see not making a bracha. That's more possible. But I haven't heard the bracha mitzvah zakenim, so I don't think anyone goes with that opinion la halacha. And the minhag Ashkenaz is we go with the straight on the tilas lulav. So that's clear regarding the bracha on the tilas lulav. What bracha, if any, do we make on chavitas haharava? This Hoshana Rabba, we're going to be banging the arabas. You picked up your pack. Is there a bracha before chavitas harava? So it's a Gemara in Sukkot on Daf Mem Vav, I think Mem Hey, I can't see that well. Mem Hey Amid Beis, Mem Vav Amid Beis. It's a major sugya on the question of brachas on a minhag. But before that, there's a question in the Gemara, machokas in the Gemara, where does the practice of chavitas harava come from? Like, where did it originate from? So one opinion is it's Yisod HaNeviim. It's a takana from the Nevi'im. It comes from the prophets Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, the Anshe Knesset Gadola. They instituted, like many other things they instituted the mitzvah of chavitas harava. That's one opinion. Well, the other opinion in the Gemara is it's rak minhag bi'alma. It's just a pure custom. So the Gemara asks, my nafkamina. They ask my question. What's the difference? Who cares whether it's Yisod Nevi'im or minhag? Either way, I'm going to do it. We're very zealous in our mitzvahs midrabanan. We're zealous in our minhagim. We're zealous in our minhagim. So my nafkamina, this morning we're all going to do it. So the Gemara says, the nafkamina bracha. The nafkamina is, do you make a bracha before you do chavitas harava? If it's a Yisod HaNevi'im, if it's a real takana, it's a real din, then you make a bracha. Again, the other takana. However, if it's a minhag, so then the Gemara says you don't make a bracha. That's the Gemara. So this Gemara is actually the source for everybody. This is a case where everyone quotes the same Gemara, but they come out with two totally different conclusions. This would be the source of the Gemara, whether you make a bracha on a minhag or not. So some Rishonim learn this is a raya that we see from this Gemara that we don't make brachas on minhagim. This is like the Gemara said. Gemara said, what's the issue? If Arav is a minhag, no bracha, so too it must follow that any other minhag I do also has no bracha. That seems to be the Sephardi school. Even though we'll see everyone's going to agree to certain minhagim that you do make a bracha. But that's the Sephardi school of thought, other Rishonim, that we see from here, we never make brachas on minhagim. And Rabbi Tam and the minhag Ashkenaz says, no, the kasha is the teretz. In other words, specifically chavitas harava you don't make a bracha on. Why? Because all that is, it's a milsa zutz, it's a little thing. You're taking the haravas and you're banging it. But on other minhagim, you do make a bracha. This is just come to tell me to exclude chavitas harava was singling out. But mashma for other minhagim, you do make a bracha. We'll get to why we make a distinction in a minute. According to the Sephardim, at least at first glance, they're consistent. You never make a bracha on any minhagim, and it seems to go with this Gemara in Sukkot. However, according to the minhag Ashkenaz, why machalik? Why make a distinction between Chavitas Harava on one hand versus, let's say, Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. We know there's a mitzvah of Hallel during Pesach, during Sukkot, and actually Sukkot we have it every day. Pesach's only the first day, or first 2 days, and we have it on Shavuos as well. So there is a mitzvah to recite Hallel on Yontiv, and a mitzvah to recite Hallel b'shas Nes at certain times. That's clearly a mitzvah, whether it's a mitzvah min Torah, mitzvah midrabanan, machlokes rishonim. We assume pashut it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, but it's a discussion whether it's a deraisa or, but it's clearly a mitzvah, and hence it's no question. Everyone agrees over Yontiv you make a bracha when you recite Hallel. It's a discussion what bracha you make, but everyone agrees to make a bracha. However, Chatzi Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, we're only saying half a Hallel. So that the Gemara points out that one of the rabbis walked into a town, it was Rosh Chodesh, and all of a sudden they started saying Hallel. And you think these guys are crazy, like what's going on here? Until he saw they skipped Hallel, he realized they skipped part of the Hallel. Of course, Chatzi Hallel, as people like point out, is a misnomer. It's really 75% Hallel. But of course, by Chatzi Hallel, halacha just means anything less than whole. Like we have by Chatzi Shir. Let's say you eat. So there's a machlokes in the Gemara Yuma. So we know in order to get a penalty, let's say if you go, you have your Big Mac, so you have to have a kazayas. You have to have a certain amount, the requisite amount of treif in order to get a good old-fashioned whipping, to be chayav makis. What about if I only take a bite out of the Big Mac, a bite out of the treif? So is that a biblical prohibition or rabbinical? So that's a machlokes in the Gemara, whether chatzi shir is asur min haTorah or asur midrabanan. Rabbi Yochanan says asur min haTorah, and Rish Lakish says asur midrabanan. So according to Rish Lakish, it's clearly different. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no difference. If I take I might as well finish it, right? What if I'm going to get? So no, there's a big difference. The good old-fashioned whipping is the difference. The makis, is there any onesh? If you eat non-kosher the requisite amount, you are violating biblical prohibition and you'll get punished. If you just take a bite, so then you violate a biblical prohibition, but there's no onesh. So that's a machlokas in general. Interesting, the machlokas is regarding, the Gemara talks about it on Yom Kippur, whether you eat a chatzi shir on Yom Kippur, whether you violate an issur. That's why that makes Yom Kippur more difficult. We pass like Rav Yochanan, that even a chatzi shir is asur min haTorah. That's why you get into how shiurim actually work. How does eating shiurim on Yom Kippur actually work if chatzi shir is asur min haTorah? But that's a separate discussion. But that's why it's more of an issue. But we passed in chatzi shir is asur min haTorah. So therefore, it's asur, but there's no owner. So in general, shiurim do make a difference in terms of ownership. It doesn't change. So to Bachatzi Hallel, once they realized he skipped half of Hallel, he realized he was only doing a minig and it didn't bother him anymore. So Chatzi Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, according to everybody, is a minig. So there's a machlokas rishonim, and in practice it's a machlokas Ashkenaz and Sfardim. When I say Sfardim, you always have to qualify the different minhagim among the Sfardim, because anytime I say minig Sfardim, the Sfardi say, what do you mean, that's not my minig? So usually when I say minig Sfarg, I mean the Machaber, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, even though that's not always, depending where you come from, Morocco, Taiman, you have different minhagim in terms of, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course, the different minhagim. So, but the standard minig Sfard is not to make a bracha on Chatzi Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, because that's a minig, and the standard minig Ashkenaz is to make a bracha.
They have a separate problem that the brachas that they make, they can't make on Chatzi Hallel.
Because they say L'gmoras HaHallel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gets, so they'd have to change the nusach, I'm saying, but that's part of, that's part of the, but that could be, that it touches on a separate point. Is it a technical issue or a fundamental issue? In other words, if you assume it's the text, so then you're saying fundamentally you agree you can make a bracha on Hallel, except you just have to change the nusach. Or do you say, no, it doesn't make a difference what text you make? The text is this. That's it. The text is more of a siman that it's a problem, because the only time, in other words, they'll say it's not called Hallel unless you Ligmor is on. Some say Likro Tosas, Rabbi Tam, that might mean anyway to finish. But so our meaning is we say a bracha on Hallel, even on Chatzi Hallel. So, because basically, so the general rule is we assume we make brachas on Minhagim. We make brachas on Daraisas, Darabbanans, and Minhagim. So, in fact, let me just point out, everybody agrees. Let's say we just had Yontav Sheni, so Sukkot, but Yontav Sheni of Shavuos, Yontav Sheni of Pesach. What do we do all day? We make brachas. We make kiddush. We sat in the sukkah, or extended the sukkah wouldn't make a difference. But I mean, for kiddush, you make a leisha about sukkah, even if it's not even the host sukkah. But we make many brachas on Yontav. So therefore, so we just have to point out, everyone there's certain minhagim that even the Sfarim agree to, making brachas on Yontav Sheni. And there's certain minhagim that everyone agrees no bracha. Today, chavitas arava. Banging, we're all in agreement, no bracha. The machlokas is the middle ground. Let's say Chatzi Hala on Rosh Chodesh is you make a. But what's the issue? The issue is the Brisker Rav explains and others because Chavitas Arava, that's a pure minhag. That's it. The only time you do Chavitas Arav is in Hoshana Rabba. There's no mitzvah context. Although you're using Arabas, but that's not Chavitas Arava. It's a different context, and therefore it's a pure minhag. On a pure minhag, you don't make a bracha. But Hallel, even Chatzi Hallel, it's true when we do Chatzi Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, it's a minhag, but the same chefsa shel Hallel, it's the same object, you're saying the same words in your Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, or it'll be a little less, than on the Hallel on the holiday. Therefore, that's a higher level minhag. It takes on a higher level status, and therefore, our minhag is that we make a bracha. So therefore, this Gemara over here in Sukkah, which says you don't make a bracha on Hoshana Rabba for Chavitas HaRava because it's a minhag, this is actually the source of whether you make a bracha minhagim all year round. Some Rishonim say this is the proof you never make a bracha minhagim, and others say no, you do make a bracha.
How do you prove from that Gemara? How does it work for that side? It says that you make a bracha on minhagim. That Gemara
because that Gemara is the Rishonim say Rabbi Tam, the sing le'al Chavitas HaRava. Only because Chavitas Arav, which is like a milsa zuto, like tiltil bi'alma, mashma, if it's not just tiltil bi'alma, then we see that you do make a bracha. So therefore, both Gemaras have that side. Why? What is some other reason? Okay, so we assume we don't make it because it's a minhag, but according to us, we explain why. But what other reasons given al pi Kabbalah? Other reasons why don't we make a bracha al Chavitas Arava? So they quote from some Sifrei Kabbalah that there's a concept in Kabbalah, the Sitra Acher, it's kind of like an evil spirit. So since the Arava represents the Sitra Acher, whatever that means exactly, so therefore we don't the klal is true, meaning the klal is we don't make a bracha on something which is a davar ra. That's a halacha concept. The Gemara in Megillah, when the Gemara says "Ein mafsikin b'kolos," that we have a principle, even though we have Hosafis all year round on Shabbos, and especially Simchat Torah, but we don't, when it comes to reading the portion of rebuke, the Tochacha, we don't break it up. So Rish Lakish says, why don't we break it up? So his reason is because She'ein mevarchet ala priniyos. We know because if you're going to call someone, make Hosafa, the person who's up there is going to make a bracha achrona, and then you're going to call someone up and make a new bracha. So therefore, we don't want to add new brachas. That's one reason. Or another interesting, also Pi Kabbalah, they point out that we know the importance of the Chevra Torah. So they point out that all year round. So what do? We try to that the esrog represents tzaddikim. There's a good smell, good looks. The lulav looks good, no smell. Hadassim, good smell, no looks. Aravas, no looks, no smell. So we try the whole sukkahs. We take the arava and we put, let's say, so to speak, the rasha, and we put it together with tzaddikim and other people, and hopefully the tzaddikim will have the influence on the rishis. But unfortunately, it didn't work out, and at the end we separate the aravas is all on its own, and therefore the positive approach didn't work for the aravas, so we have to spank it, and we have to bang it on the ground, and therefore we separate the chavitas arava, and therefore it shows that it didn't want to become part of the chevra, and therefore that's why it's separating itself and we don't make a bracha. So those are different reasons within this different Kabbalah, but the bottom line, no matter your Ashkenaz, Sfard, when it comes to Chavitas Rabba, we're all in agreement. Well, the Gemara had a machloket, but we passed in like the opinion in the Gemara, it's a minhag neviim, and hence we would not make a special bracha on the Chavitas Rabba.